one thing that I've never really had much success with is trying to match the sun. It's never quite felt right to me. Knowing that we were in Arrakis, we had a bit of a hunch that if we joined enough vortexes together, we were able to kind of create something that was equivalent to a soft sun, or even more powerful than a soft sun. We put 64 Vortex 8s together, which we called the Vortex 512, because it had 512 pixels. We used the cream source LNX system, created a monster of a light, which was game-changing for us.
My name is Eric Koritz. I'm a cinematographer. I'm most known for Ozark, Special Ops Lioness, and soon-to-be upcoming show Ransom Canyon on Netflix. That's that. As a cinematographer, to me, light is everything. Sculpting light to me is how I tell a story. Profoto as a brand is known for their quality of light. To me, it's exciting to be able to bring that into the cinema world. Using the L1600D on set makes my job easier and faster. Without a ballast, you can rig it in ways that other lights can't be rigged. What delicate work. It's much more versatile than a 1.8K HMI. It's small, you can plug it into a wall, and it's more powerful and more energy efficient. They have over 50 modifiers, but there's also a Bowens mount, so you can do an infinite amount of third-party modifiers. I feel like this light will change the way we work. What I love most about the L1600D is the power of the light, the quality of the light, which is beautiful. And then when you couple that with their cinema ecosystem of modifiers that you can make it an incredibly versatile light, it really brings out the best in an LED light.
Who are you?
Bond.
James Bond.
I want to create, to make something big out of something little.
Well, as you'll know, I've always thought that we tried to go a bridge too far. Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities. And some of my realities become dreams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming to this, the final BSC seminar of this year's Expo. And I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the whole team who have worked on these seminars, on the whole Expo, but particularly in this tent. It's a colossal undertaking for them. And I'd just like to mention Audra Marshall, John Daley, Gwyn Evans, James Simon, Eley Johnson, and all the crews around the room who have been recording these for future viewing. So I think a round of applause. So, the UK has a rich history of documentary filmmaking, and many of its most celebrated cinematographers either started shooting docs before taking up fiction drama, or continued working in both genres throughout their careers. Chris Menges, Diane Tams, Dick Pope, Roger Deakins, Nina Kellgren, Nick Nolan, to name just a few, all committed themselves at one time or another to a non-studio, non-scripted world where you are not only chasing Cartier-Bresson's decisive moment 24 or 25 times a second, whilst controlling lighting, composition, and exposure on the run, but also practicing those most human of traits in the practice of your profession: patience, empathy, and doggedness. Today, we set out to explore the relationship between documentary and scripted drama via the experiences of 4 cinematographers who first put their eye to an eyepiece in the service of what is often referred to as reality. A controversial word, and one that we might not have time to fully explore in the time allotted. To clarify, we know documentaries can take many shapes and forms, from the classic observational fly on the wall to the highly stylized meta versions of the genre, in between all sorts of presenter-led or image-only films experimenting with structure, form, and technique. The reality in our title today refers to docs in all their manifestations, plus factual news and current affairs, all that is widely regarded as being outside the scripted narrative universe. But then it's the crossover we are interested in, a foot in both camps, if you will. With us here today, feet planted firmly on the ground, are Catherine Goldschmidt. Catherine's credits include Doctor Who, the Emmy-nominated show Dummy, and the critically acclaimed BBC Amazon miniseries Chloe. She also shot a block on HBO's prequel series of Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, for which she was nominated for an Emmy, and for which she is among the nominees for the ASE Award for Outstanding Cinematography in a 1-hour regular series, which will be awarded tomorrow week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
good luck
yeah.
with that. Good luck with that. Catherine is also a founding member of Illuminatrix. Sean Bobbitt, BSC. Sean's break into narrative feature filmmaking came with Michael Winterbottom's Wonderland in 1998. He has since worked multiple times with director Steve McQueen, in particular 12 Years a Slave, for which earned Sean a BAFTA nomination for Best Cinematography, as well as an ASE nomination for Outstanding Achievement in Cinematography. Sean was also nominated for a BAFTA and an Academy Award for his work on Judas and the Black Messiah. Nicola Daley, ACS BSC. Nicola shoots high-end TV drama and feature films. She was the lead DP on The Handmaid's Tale, Season 5, with director Elizabeth Moss, for which Nicola picked up ACS Awards for Best Cinematography in 2023 and 24. She has numerous other TV shows under her belt, including Harlots for Hulu, Domina for Sky, and Gentleman Jack for HBO. Her work on Benediction, directed by highly acclaimed UK director Terence Davies, earned Nicola another ACS award, as well as one for Best Cinematography at the ICS 2021-22 Awards. Barry Ackroyd, BSC. Barry has been shooting features for over 30 years, collaborating with directors such as Ken Loach, 12 films in all, I won't list them all. Paul Greengrass on films such as United 93, Green Zone, Captain Phillips, and sorry, I should have been putting up pictures of all these people. That's Catherine. Now,
It's
sorry,
Sean.
I've got a button
It's Sean.
here that I was so engrossed in my text. So that's Catherine. Then we had Sean. Sean? No, Nicola. Nicola from
Iraq.
Iraq.
Yep.
Whoa.
Barry Ackroyd.
Whoa.
And next one should be Sean. Oh.
I think we did.
No, you did me.
We did, Sean.
Oh, we did
Yeah.
Sean. Oh, we did Sean.
Yeah,
There
I
you
was
go.
the one on the
Okay,
right.
sorry.
Right.
Let's hope the clips go better. Okay, Barry, where was I? 1993, Green Zone, Captain Phillips and Jason Bourne, and Catherine Bigelow, including her multi-Oscar winning film, The Hurt Locker, for which Barry earned both Academy and ASE nominations, as well as a BAFTA win for Best Cinematography. I could have said so much more about all our distinguished cinematographers here today, but I think you get the gist. They are all highly successful practitioners of the art and craft and all share something in common. A close affinity with documentary, factual shooting. It's where they come from, it's what gave them their eye, and it's what continues in a variety of ways to inspire them. So our panel. So, I'm sorry, I got a heckler already.
Echo.
Anyway, later. So I'm going to throw this question down to all of you, but I'll start with you, Catherine, if I may. So basically, going back to the beginning of your career, how did you start, and was documentary factual your goal, or did you see it as a means to an end, i.e. getting to narrative filmmaking?
Okay, so I'll try to keep it short. Tell the short version. It wasn't the goal. No, it wasn't the goal. And in fact, when I fell into documentary, I had already gone to film school, focused on narrative for that time, built a narrative reel. And to be honest, when I got out of school, it was really a means to an end. It was a means to work and make money, honestly. But I very quickly realized that it was a really satisfying place to work. Obviously, not just the people I was working with who I really liked collaborating with. One of my very first directors is Morgan Neville, who, and one of my very first jobs was on his feature 20 Feet from Stardom, which he then won the Academy Award for. So, and he's, I think, honestly, to this day, my most frequent. If I look at my own IMDb page, the person who I've collaborated with the most over the years is him. I really valued the relationships I built in that world, but what I also got out of it, I think, was really just, the interaction that you have with the real world and with real stories is so immediate. And, I think when you are just starting out, and you're trying to shoot, whatever short films or music videos, I remember reading a lot of short films, honestly, and thinking like, this is not a great script, like maybe I'll have the opportunity to do X, Y, and Z, so I should do it. But with the documentary projects that I was, fortunate enough to be on, I never felt that way, because it was always real life that you were interacting with, and it was always something that was actually unfolding in front of you. And so I found it a much, in some ways, more engaging, more exciting place to be.
Right, so but you could have gone either which route, but that you warmed to that.
I warmed to it, but that being said, because I had grown up, being a movie lover mostly of fiction films, and because I had, spent time in film school, learning so many of the skills that do, translate between the worlds. But I think, I guess it was a parallel track for me for a while, let's say. Parallel track.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Barry, can you...
I hope to keep it short as well. So I started, I was fully committed to documentaries. I went through an art school which had a film department, and we got very much entangled in documentaries and made quite a lot of interesting things that got themselves distributed and everything. But so when I came out, it was also that you have to think about the era and the period. So we're talking about now, probably 20 more years before. In the late 1970s, there were very few British films being made, in fact. And that was all being done by a handful of people, including the BBC or some independent television. But then also, it just belonged to studios. It'd be, another Bond film and another, carry-on film, as well as Kubrick and the great filmmakers, Anderson and stuff. So anyway, so it wasn't a route. I didn't have a route to go into, and the thing that I really wanted to do was documentaries. So I moved to London, and I found my first job, which was to assistant on a documentary that went to Northern Ireland in the middle of the Troubles. No one else would go. This was the bottom of the barrel. That's where I was. And I took that job on as an assistant, and then the next one and the next one, until 10 years have gone by, or not, by 10 years I was already shooting, but I got to shoot with some great documentaries. The whole point I'm saying is that I think over that period where I had documentaries, I know I worked on 100 films. I went to 50 countries. They took us all around the world. And it was always to go and find a film. Go and find the story. Go here and look for the story. Whether it was the Russian space mission, the first people to go there. I was an assistant on going to China in the 1980s when it was a closed place. We went to 6 trips to there, and 6 trips on the Arab world, and we did, and I was working with this great cinematographer, Mike Fox, but also Roger Deakins, Dick Pope. We did anthropological films. So that now is the point of that is, that's my Rolodex of information. So I read a script, I look at it, I think it's not that great, that script, but this fits in. This is what I remember. This is how it looked when I was in the real place, whatever that story is. It could be, and I jokingly, but not only partly, you name a subject and I'll tell you a story about it, because we did just about all these things. So that was my beginning, and it just segued naturally into feature films. Fortunately, through the great skill of Ken Loach, which is my learning that was my school for drama, and he gave me plenty of opportunity to do that. So that great fortune in that sense, but that was then it became my aim.
Right. Okay. We'll come back to a lot of these things you've already mentioned. Sean,
well, documentaries, it came out of desperation, as much as anything else. I'd started off as a news cameraman, which was not a choice. That was desperation as well. It was just simply a way of making a living. And at the time when I was young, I thought I was going to be a great writer, and writer of screenplays and television shows and this, that, and the other. And, but you don't just walk into that. But at the same time, you do have to make a living. And I was very fortunate that the living I found was in an area which I'd never even considered, which was news initially. And as I was doing all this stuff in news, which is, like Barry was saying, you're all around the world, you're doing this, that, and the other, you will be the most boring person in a dinner conversation ever, because you always have a story that coincides to what anyone else is talking about, really dull. But I was thinking that this was all, I was just gathering stories, that I was gathering knowledge of the world, that all of this was going to make me a great writer. But ultimately news is rather dangerous and kind of boring after a while. And a natural transition was into documentaries. And the difference is that news, you are only reactive to what is happening around you. When you move into documentaries, there is that possibility of creativity within, because you're given more time. The story, like I say, you're always searching for the story and looking for interesting ways to tell a really complex story in a very short period. So after 10 years of news, 10 years of documentaries, I finally realized, actually, I'm doing the right job. I should be a cameraman. I love this. It was a great job. And it was sort of from there that I thought, okay, well, where do I go now? And it was then that journey to try and break out into the world of drama began.
Thank you. Nicola.
I have kind of a parallel story to Katie, I think. I went to film school. Actually, the first kind of module they made us do was documentary. And they showed us Grey Gardens and a bunch of Herzog films. And I was like, wow, why have I never seen these before? So it was really incredibly eye-opening. And then I built up a narrative reel, same as Katie. And then when I came out, the first job I got was documenting. We went to East Timor and documented testimonies about the Indonesian occupation. So it was kind of for Southeast Asian Digital Library. So it was kind of an interview, and then you had to go and do a little sort of actuality of that person in their everyday life. And I just, like these guys, I just sort of fell in love with documentaries. I was doing fiction at the same time, but I was doing very low-budget Australian feature films and music videos, and so documentary became my bread and butter, but I would never swap it for anything in the world. I ended up working with some of Australia's best documentary directors, and I just learned incredible amounts of knowledge about, you know, going around the world with one light and looking for the light, and like these guys, I went to some weird and wacky places, but I loved the psychology of it. I loved sort of unpeeling, you know, what happened with the people that you were filming and the journey you went on with them as you went through the documentary. So, yeah, I wouldn't swap my beginning for anything, even though I was, you know, later on I was desperately trying to get into narrative, and everybody said, you only do documentaries, you don't.
Right. So there came a point when you thought, okay, I'm gonna move on to that.
Yes, in Australia, I sort of tried to do. I missed lighting, really. I sort of could do an interview in my sleep, so I thought I need to challenge myself more, and so I tried to push more into narrative. And in Australia, they just kept saying, "You just do documentaries, you don't do fiction." So, but then when I came to London, actually, I came back to England. Everyone said, "Oh, we love a DP that has done documentaries." So I was like, "Oh, okay, right, I'm in the right place." So
yes, it became suddenly sort of the must-have trait in the cinematographer to have those doc sensibilities. There was a point, maybe in the noughties, I think, when it suddenly think, "Oh, you do that thing, don't you?" That
became cool.
Yeah, it became cool. Yeah. So there was never any frustration in your early developments, any of you, where you thought, I need now to sort of get on and do that. You were sort of, were you aiming? Were you consciously sort of thinking, in 10 years' time, I'm going to be on a film set and I'm going to be.
Back down the line again. Yeah, no, I mean, I think I definitely always had that as a goal in mind, but I don't know. I still didn't feel like, even though it was a slightly different track or a little bit of a detour, I didn't feel like it was miles away at all. And I think, you know, that's something that I know you want us to talk about is the way the worlds overlap. And I think there really is, you know, lots of overlap, honestly. But I think for myself, like, was I frustrated? Yeah, I'm frustrated a lot of the time. But I think you know what Nicola just said about like lighting an interview in your sleep. Like, I think you can get to that point if you find you're only doing that kind of work. And so, you know, for myself, like, you know, variety is really, you know, the spice of my life. So yeah, I think to answer your question, yes, it was definitely a goal to shoot more. By the way, Morgan hates it when I say narrative. He's like, documentaries are narratives. It's fiction or scripted. You know, that's what he would be saying to me right now if I was talking about narrative.
It is storytelling.
Yeah.
It's amazing storytelling because, and I never kind of categorized filmmaking into higher or lower or smaller pieces. So I was completely happy doing documentaries. In fact, my only ambition was to keep doing documentaries till it kind of accidentally came my way. Not quite accidentally. You obviously your skills then get recognized, and that includes lighting and camera operating, storytelling, getting to the heart of it, doing something that's different to the way that a regular kind of film might be. You develop all those things if you're doing documentaries. You went searching for stories. You go. I'll have to talk about it later, but you know, going out to make a documentary, taking a 180-degree turn, starting on another subject altogether, and then making that into one of the most famous documentaries there are. But it was there's a little clip from it coming on later. But that was storytelling, and that's where that was what was valuable to filmmakers.
Yeah.
You know, those filmmakers who were prepared not to do it through making storyboards and having it all organized and sticking to the script, because that became too controlled. You know? And if I'm teaching, I want to teach use the serendipity. Be alert. And the one thing I did learn in documentary is the concentration necessary to do that is enormous. You know, you put that camera on your shoulder, and you are in control, and therefore you have this responsibility to capture the moment. It only happens once, and you have to catch it. Yeah. So I was completely happy with documentaries, but really happy when I moved into film, features.
I mean,
it's all filmmaking.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that Catherine touched on in her first answer, was that full involvement in shooting docs. You know, I mean, you're obviously on a film set as a DOP, you're incredibly focused, but all the senses are going like the clappers when you're shooting doc. You're listening more than anything.
Yeah.
And you're cutting it in your head. You're delivering the rushes that are going to make sense for an editor back.
You're working with the sound recordist. You're making sure the lens, the shots that you make don't exclude the sound recordist or the ability to capture it, or to be in the way of the story physically, or like just by your overwhelming presence, which, you know, the fly on the wall we've never is just an expression. You're a whole film crew, maybe it's 2 people or 3 people, but you're in the room with somebody and you're not a fly. You're actually controlling it. And just one simple thing that I learned, really, and it's the best advice I can give you about lighting films of any kind. It's just the relationship between the light, it was often be a window light, the subjects and the object, the camera. And you, if you put it in your hand and you move around, it's suddenly a kinetic relationship. And you would start the shot and you think, that's not nice lighting, let alone like capturing the moment. You would move a little and get the backlight in there and just, wow, I like that shot. And you're thinking visually, story-wise, you know, the geography of the room and everything comes together. It's a fantastic, and I still try and keep that excitement, that feeling when your heart's beating. Try and keep that when you're making films if you can, you know, no matter how dull it seems at the time. Like, get your heart beating and make it really exciting. So.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Well, I think that's a good, you've queued up your own clip very much. I think, so we're going to see a clip from Barry's film, The Leader, the Driver, and the Driver's Wife.
Yeah.
And this was a film you made in 1991.
Okay. Was it?
Yeah. Yeah. And anyway, James, can we...
Can I just say one quick thing about it? I mean, we were asked to look for some link, and I happened to see this trailer from a film with Nick Broomfield, who you might know is a great documentary filmmaker that I did. It was the first film I did with him. And we got ourselves, we went to South Africa to make one story. We turned around 360 and we went and made this film about this fascist group, the Afrikaner resistance movement. You should see it. But what really turned me on when I saw it, that's exactly the camera moves I use today on a feature film. And if you watch certainly the second part of it, it's in 2 pieces. The second part, just watch the camera move, the lens, the zoom, which is, well, I love zooms. The zoom, the movement, the timing, being behind the story, because you're naturally behind the story. And then I apply that to feature films. So if you please look at it in that way, not just a piece of storytelling, but how it's captured. And think of it, this is what the cinematographer can give you if it's done well.
Thank you, James.
ek nou vanaand vir jou sê, kyk ou Nelson Mandela, kyk ou Kossa, as jy vanaand saam met my hier was, dan sou jy geweet het, wie de donder is jy, om te sê, die witman is bang.
Stop it now.
Excuse me, Mr. Demarge.
Yes.
I'm sorry about the, mix-up.
Yes, but listen, my good friend. This is the last time that when of your people, I don't mind whether it's a woman or not, be cheeky with me. You understand? This is my country, this is my place. This is my day. And last night I said I don't want you people anymore here. This morning you have to speak to me. And the first thing you do is to take photos from me. Before you even ask me if you are welcome or not.
I thought this was a parade.
And if you people will interfere today again, like you did yesterday, then I will put you out. You understand me? Yesterday, when we came from Ventersdorp, you even interfered with security. You passed my car 2 times and blocked the traffic so that the head of security cannot even see me. And you are just taking over. Who the hell do you think you are?
We were just trying to get a passport shot.
Listen, I'm not working for your bloody company, okay? So you do the things which I like, not what you people like. Do you understand me, lady? You even interfered with security. My wife and my child wasn't in that bloody car. So what do you ask now?
Well, we just wanted to take the parade, that was all.
Yes, but please see that you're not in the way of the parade itself. You can take some pictures. Go on. But don't interfere, please.
Okay.
And this man, I sit in Ventersdorp. I tell you people when he can take shots from us. But he's like a bloody monkey. He's hanging on that camera like a monkey in a bloody tree.
He's a monkey. You are a monkey.
So that's good storytelling, I think.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, having got a foothold in narrative filmmaking, scripted drama, were you aware that your doc experience was directly informing your drama work? Did you consciously take it with you, or did you feel you were entering a whole new sphere of storytelling and in effect having to start again? But you can see from, you can see that is how you. That is in Captain Phillips. That's in
1993 and
in 1993. It's there. Yeah. So I think the answer is clear.
Quite clearly. I try and reduce a film, no matter what the budget or whatever. I try and reduce it back down to the documentary. The process. There's a. I mean, when I was at art college, we saw a lot of documentary films. Penny Baker, Leacock, Drew. These great American documentaries, plus the Canadian and the British filmmakers as well. It's fantastic stuff. And one of them, Drew, once said, "Fuck the dolly, fuck the tripod, fuck the crane, just shoot and shoot and shoot." And I use dollies and cranes and all kinds of equipment, and we were at the show, so I'm not knocking all that. I'm just saying that if you can get your brain into the position where you're shooting only the necessary part of it, and doing it in a way that doesn't take you out of the story, and for me that's ultimately it's that what you just saw, being there in the right place at the right time. Even if it's a drama, you've created all that, but each moment is critical, and each movement you make is critical, and the concentration you put into doing this is ultimate. I can't say it any other way. It's a fantastic experience. So I'd still take it no matter what the film. I just take my documentary background to it, and I'll remember some of those locations and scenes that I've shot, the hundreds, thousands of them around the world at different places, different times, with different subjects, and apply it to the story. And that is the answer. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And when any of you were reading scripts, once you got into scripted drama, were you attracted to stories that chimed? I'll throw this to you, Nicola. Were you attracted to stories that chimed with your experience of documentaries, or did you feel you had to prove yourself by doing something completely different and not doco style at all? Was that?
I think I was just attracted to really good stories. So when I read it, if I'm not engaged and sort of wanting to sit in the cinema for 2 hours, then I don't want to do it. So it's really the storytelling aspect. I think just launching off from what Barry was talking about, I think it taught me so many things. It taught me to listen. I would sort of turn up on doco shoots with my headphones, and directors would say to me, oh, you're listening. I was like, well, how on earth can I shoot any of this stuff without listening? And then I know what the story is. So I think bringing that into drama is really about, and I love to prep. I love to be really prepped. But I love to be really prepped so I can throw it away. And then I think I almost take that doco sensibility when I watch the block and the actors are there and it's all fresh, and then I can see it. I know we have a really good plan if the director has sort of, wanted to prep. But then I kind of watch it with fresh eyes. So I think documentary taught me, not only to sort of edit in your head, which I think is invaluable. So when the shit does hit the fan on TV and you've got 10 minutes left to do a scene, you can just go, right, we just do this, turns into an over the shoulder, and then do the reverse. So it's invaluable, but I think the listening was a really big, because then you can sort of boil it down to what is this scene really about? Because there's a million places to put the camera, but what is the character doing and what is the scene about? And therefore that will tell you the cinematography.
Yeah.
Because when you're shooting something in real time, you really do just have to make one correct choice at the start, which is where to even put yourself in the scene. And as soon as you train yourself to only think like, I'm one person, I have one camera, I can put myself in one place to then capture this entire story, that's such a valuable skill to take into, more dramatic, scripted, multi-camera work, because that's the essence. That's the most important place to put yourself is there.
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes you enter a room blind, and you've got to make that instant decision what's the best thing, against the windows, next to the windows, whatever. Yeah.
Which is, I think the one thing that I carry with me mostly, and it absolutely echoes that I think we've all, every documentary cameraman has the same experience if they love the job and they really want to do it well. All of these things that are being said are your bread and butter. But the other thing is speed. The ability to walk into a room and start to see a sequence, so that as people are speaking, as things are moving, as things are happening, you are constantly breaking it down. And as things change within it, you're then reassessing what has changed. Where do I need to go now to tell what has changed? And do I start all over again? Because this change actually is what this has become about. And if you do that for years and years and years, when you walk into a set with a script, you are so far ahead. Because you already, like you say, you've done all the prep. You know what's supposed to happen. But I still find, as you're saying, the excitement is that when the actors come in and do something totally unexpected, and then you are then reacting to that in real time. And that's where that sort of documentary training holds you in good stead, because it's a second nature. You respond in a way, instead of just sitting there going, oh, he shouldn't have said that, or he shouldn't have moved there. You are focused on the action, as you always have been, and constantly assessing what's going on, listening to what's going on, and trying to anticipate what might happen next. And I think that, your experience in the documentary world sets you up to do that very successfully.
And so do you think you approach prep with that at the back of your mind? Do you invite chance and serendipity into your prep, or not? I mean, do you enjoy the prospect of, well, I mean, you're not sloppy, obviously, but I mean, but you think, well, let's see what happens on the day. You know, and
absolutely. I think I love that chance and that magic that happens when, like Sean said, the actors do something you didn't quite realise, or it's sort of that relationship between, you know, I guess because I did observational documentary, so it was always that operating that sort of closeness to what was happening and that change and being able to react. And so I think, especially with lighting, I think documentary teaches you to look at what's already there. So I don't sort of come from a commercial background. I don't sort of black it all out and then start again. I'd much rather sort of push the first AD into, right, we've got to go there at this time because that's when it's really going to work, and then we'll build all the other shots around that. So I'd much rather sort of observe the location and find out what the location's giving me, and then work the lighting with that to tell the story.
Yeah, well, you've led me very neatly onto my next question. So Chris Menges said, if you want to know about lighting, shoot documentaries. Catherine, if I go, yes. How did you come to understand lighting? I mean, in both aesthetic terms as well as practical.
I mean, I think it's cumulative. You know, I think the more that you have your hands on lighting, are in charge of knowing where to put the lights. I mean, even before that, you know, because I did work as an electrician as well, so even working for a gaffer, for other DPs, you know, observing where they would put the light, how they would want it. But then, you know, to tie it into the documentary work, you know, so often you are just working with natural light or one light. And again, it's like when you just have one decision to make, it boils down to the most essential thing. Like I have this one key light. Like where should I put it? What's going to help me the most in this scenario? And so that's a really, you know, valuable place to begin from. And I'm sure, you know, sort of subconsciously, it's a place I go back to. And hearing what Nicola said about, you know, when you're scouting locations, like seeing what the location gives you, I'm much more of that ilk as well. You know, I'd much rather, you know, the clip I pulled is a perfect example actually of that, of seeing what the location was, what was going to be beautiful there, and using that really.
Yeah. Sean, your first feature was with Michael Winterbottom's film.
Yeah.
And that was, as I remember, that was taking 16mm camera out into the streets of Soho and just filming by. I mean, was that a sort of a bit of a comfort zone for you? Do you think I've done this?
It was the perfect transition.
Yeah.
And one that I've been looking for years and years, to move out of the documentary world and into the drama world, because all he wanted was a documentary cameraman who could shoot in available light, who could respond to the actors, who, you know, he wanted a freedom and a movement within it, you know, which is specifically why, you know, he chose me, because of the, you know, the handheld nature of it, almost the crudity of it as well. And thank you to Michael Winterbottom. I mean, it changed my life, and just like that. Because it is difficult to make the transition. I mean, and you asked about frustrations, and there was about a 4-year period of frustration, which was, you know, it's very hard, especially, you know, when I'm watching what Barry's doing and I'm watching what you're doing. And you made that transition into the feature world. And that's what gave me the idea that it was a possibility, was to see what the two of you were doing. And suddenly, that's, because up to then I never thought of going into features. But it made it a possibility. And you know, subsequent to that, I mean, in the documentary world, all I did was copy what Barry did. and you did. Modern Times in particular was incredibly significant TV series for me in terms of lighting.
Yeah, I
as
think
much
I
as
might have
anything
mentioned
else.
you to Michael Winterbottom, actually.
You probably Barry he's actually made my career.
No, I didn't mean it like
True.
that. Something I'd spoken to him about briefly, and I said, no, you should use Sean. No, I'm not taking any credit for that. No.
Well, no,
I'm just, because what you did, I watched it, and I was in awe of it like that. I wish I could have done what you did on what was the film?
Wonderland.
Wonderland. What beautiful film. What a
Well,
great.
but I only did what you would have done.
But better. He did it better.
And did you make a film quite like that again, Sean?
Well, no, I made a conscious effort to never make a film like that.
All right, okay.
Because I was very fortunate. Through that film, I was able to get an agent, and suddenly all these scripts were coming in, which were exactly the same film. And I said to my agent, I'm not going to spend my life making that film again. And so I didn't work for close to a year because I wasn't going to do that and close my opportunities down. And thank God I didn't.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm happy to do it all forever. You know, when you make a good film like that, then you're trying to not reproduce it, but like learn from it and move on and develop it. And I think there might, you know, like I said, I think I've stuck to the same path basically, and I think sometimes people think better to be the master of all and be able to do, you know, like shoot like Roger Deakins and you know whatever, and Bob Richardson. You could be doing that, and you could be like this. You could be like me, and then, but it isn't. I think you for me, it's like trying to perfect what you do over and over again is. I get satisfaction from that, you know, and to see progress, and then you get knocked back because you get a script and a film that just turns into some rubbish, you know, but you still keep the same attitude, I suppose.
Yeah. So I asked my 4 panelist friends here to offer up examples of where they have consciously revisited their experience from their doc days in the service of dramatic storytelling, the approach, technique, movement, whatever. And Nicola and Catherine both came up with excellent clips to demonstrate this. So Nicola, we'll go first with yours, if I may. Could you give us, so we'll play Nicola's clip in a minute, James, but just could you give us a background to this scene, what we're about to see?
It's from Handmaid's Tale season 5, and normally I have 2 operators, but I operated this scene, and I thought it was just a good example of that movement, of that energy, of observational sort of documentary style. I was able to light it in a way where I could move around. It's just a small bathroom set. And Elizabeth Moss, she directs, and so we have a very close relationship. And so she really likes, as an actor, she really likes like a wider lens close up to her face. She doesn't have much vanity. And so, although she jokes now about the camera's sort of started here and now it's gone up here. And so it was just an example of how that connection, I think, that I used to have with documentaries with the subjects, I now have with Lizzie, and we were able to do the scene in about 15 minutes or something. We did 2 different angles on the handheld stuff, and she said to me afterwards, "All right, you know, I knew this would be a great relationship." So I think taking the doco sort of philosophy, it really taught me about lenses, and it really taught me about, you know, if you film someone right there on an observational wider angle, how that makes that subject feel, and then if you're observing them on a longer lens, how it affects the subject that you're filming. So it was kind of a philosophy of lenses that's come full circle to Handmaids.
Right, okay. Let's have a look. James, could you play Nicola's clip, please? Thank you. Great. So did Elizabeth just say, look, I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to do my stuff, you keep up? Or, you know, with words to that effect. I mean, you did that dance where she's just going off on one and you have to keep up.
Exactly. It's about the trauma that she's just, spoiler alert, she just killed someone. So it's about that sort of Lady Macbeth trauma of trying to get the blood off her. So, you know, we talked about, she's an incredible director actually because she is such a good actress. She comes from inside the scene. So she knows like where the point of view of the scene is. And so we just talked about that rawness, that observational documentary quality of just like capturing that, you know, the texture of the rubbing of the blood and the, and so it was sort of like, right, I'm going to burst in, I'm going to do this. And then, you know, all the stuff of her banging, I didn't know she was going to do that. And so we just, but I think that to me it reminds me of when I used to shoot observational and the scene used to just unfold in front of you, and it was that sort of thrilling, like Barry was saying, getting your heart going, and knowing that you're capturing the essence of the story is,
Yeah.
But she loves that. She loves that immediacy. If you start filming her with long lenses, she gets very nervous. So she loves that camera right up, you know, next to her.
Yeah. Well, it's totally in character because it's June's world. I think you were saying in the earlier seminar, for those who weren't here, it's all through her eyes.
Yes.
So staying close to.
Yeah, and I was saying before, they tell you when you start Handmaids, if you only shoot June and her point of view and what she experiences, then you've shot the scene. Because that is how they sort of make Handmaids. Even though it's got this huge epic sort of Kubrick-esque symmetry to it, it's also got this handheld emotional connection. So that's sort of the only brief they give you when you start is, you know, shoot her feeling and her experience, and then so the documentary comes in handy.
Yeah, and it certainly helps having her being the director as well, because
Yeah, it's very immediate, and she's incredible. When I first started with her, she you know, was sort of doing a close-up, and she did all the lines and everything, and then she starts looking up, and then she's looking down, and then she's around, and then she calls cut, and she comes back to the monitor, and she said, "Boss, I'm just giving myself options for the edit." And I was like, wow, you know, she's in the character, and then she's directing herself and giving herself edit options. It's quite incredible to watch.
Yeah, no, very impressive. Thank you. Catherine, lead us into your clip. Give us a background to this.
Okay. Well, when Mike asked us to sort of think about a piece of fiction filmmaking that used our documentary sensibilities, I thought of this scene. It's from a BBC One drama, Band 2, that I shot a few years ago called Chloe. And the scene originally was scripted to be night. And we went and we scouted this beach, and basically I knew, I don't know what, is it better to watch the scene first, actually?
Sure,
and then
absolutely,
I can, it might be better. But anyway, I'm trying to think if anything's useful to tell you beforehand. Let's watch the scene, and then I can tell you the sort of.
Absolutely. James, thank you.
I need to get to my store. It's nearly late, and I need to open up.
This evening? Mum, let's go home. You must be freezing.
It's the flea market on Corn Street. Do you know the way? Come on. Excuse me. Have you heard of personal space?
Right, okay. Can you just come with me, Mum, okay? Who are you? Because I don't understand. I can't remember. It's me. Mum. Can we just go home? Get warm? Yeah.
So a beautiful, heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, yeah. So I knew that was the scene, and when you read Beach at Night and you're working with the BBC budget and schedule, you just think, oh God, I don't. So anyway, so I pitched the idea to the director, who was my friend, Alice Seabright. What do you think if we actually tried to do this? Because the next scene did have to be night. The next scene for sure had to be night. And not only did it have to be night, but we had to shoot it on the same night. Yeah. So there was also this very real scheduling concern about, like, how do we even fit all this work into the time we have? And so it was both a scheduling suggestion, but also I just knew that somehow if we could do that scene and we could do it at magic hour, right as the sun was setting, not only would it be beautiful, but we could also, we could do it really quickly. But everybody had to be on board for an approach like that, right? So first of all, Alice had to be on board, and then she had to talk to the actors because we did it literally in the 20 minutes, 15 minutes, that period that is so specific. And so everybody had to be game to do it that way. But they were, everybody, the two actors understood, and they were able to rehearse ahead of time, but we had just two cameras cross-shooting them. We did cross-shoot, yeah, exactly. And that, I'll say as well, that came from my documentary background, but also I did work in reality TV, and that's what you do a lot in reality TV as well. So I knew we could do it in the time if everybody, would participate and be okay with that. So yeah, two cross-shooting cameras, and I think we got to do, I think we managed to squeeze in 2 takes on 2, there was a lens swing in there so that we could. So really simple, right? Really simple approach, but I just knew if somehow everybody felt like they could perform in that circumstance, then it would actually give the scene, so much more.
Yeah,
Did the actors enjoy that scenario?
I think they did, actually. Yeah, I think they appreciated, knowing, like, okay, we only have until the sun sets to get this, and we have to wait until the sun gets low enough to start. They totally got that, and it was good.
And were you on one of the cameras?
I was, yeah. I'm the run-in camera.
Right.
Which, it's a choice to run on a beach.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's me.
And is operating a must? Did you all operate?
Yeah.
No, Barry
does.
does.
I think it is. Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
And
what do you guys? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Never not
No.
operated.
No.
I did one film where I didn't operate. I've never been so bored in my whole life. Really.
Yeah.
But it is if you're not behind the camera, then none of that experience that you've had for the whole of your life means anything. Because it's only that connection of the experience of what you know, what you've done, what you've seen, and also the time that you have had a camera in your hand or on your shoulder. And that's one thing that I would say to anyone who's interested in being a cinematographer. Documentary is the best training ground because you will be filming all day, every day, non-stop. And that's what you need, is that experience. But if you go through and gain all that experience, I'm not going to give that away. I mean, this is where the fun is in the operating.
Sure. And multiple cameras, you learn to communicate what it is you're doing, you know. And even recently, you operators who don't want to use the zoom because they think it's prime lenses are the only way of doing it, and I don't feel that. So then you have to get in sync with them, and then because you might have shot that scene with you swung lenses, so we would have done it on a zoom and pushed it. But you've got to push in like almost simultaneously. You know, you have to understand. Yeah. And sometimes when that works, it's really, really good. Yeah, but I get why you do it. And I thought it was fantastic. You couldn't have done that in a conventional way, like one setup, turn around and do it again. The light would be absolutely different.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And it was absolutely the right way to do it. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, honestly, when you can cross shoot, it really does help the performances, you know, live in the moment in which they're happening. So I do think, you know, actors really, you know, the show I did last year, The Last of Us, they love cross shooting on that show for that reason, for the performance of it all. So I got asked to do that a lot on that show, and you know, it makes some DPs really uncomfortable. But I think if you do, you know, if you have it in your wheelhouse, then it can actually, you know, really help.
Yeah. And I don't think that would have the emotional impact if it was shot in a conventional way. I think it's the way you did it was absolutely.
Great performance.
Carried the emotion.
Yeah, no.
I mean, and that's it, capturing it. But it was like my documentary piece where, you know, I didn't know he was going to do all that stuff, but it was a gift, you know, especially because my son had been born and I hadn't got home. I needed to get back from South Africa. And when I got called a monkey, for instance, I just went inside. I went, yes, now we have an end to the film. Because, you know, that's one of the things in a documentary. You're never quite sure what the end is.
And also, Barry, that you keep filming. I remember when, you know...
Oh, never stop.
Yeah, I worked with an Australian documentary maker and when I was very starting. And he was like, just keep, no matter what happens. They start addressing you if they start...
I was hit when in that first meeting thing. I got slapped twice by, you know, the camera was knocked out of my hands. Nick was more dangerous than Tour Blanche, Nick Broomfield. But we never put it down. He's always saying, put the camera down, you know, and by the end of the shoot, the final part, he was saying, you're like, I just don't listen to him. But that's the point. Is the point. I'm not there to listen to him. It's to capture that moment, you know. So, yes, it's a great film. I'm very proud of that film. You know, and it was hard working with Nick, but he was a great director. He's a great director.
Okay, so given that the doc camera person is traditionally regarded to be the fly on the wall, you always try not to be. How did you adapt to working with a large crew, i.e. being an HOD? Was that transition easy? Sean?
Well, still to this day, if I don't think anyone's watching, I'll go and move a lighting stand. So it's hard to break the habit. It was traumatic, the first proper, I did a TV series called Nicola, Nickleby, which on the first day of the shoot, we were in central London. It was a period piece, of course. And I was riding in on my motorcycle down the embankment, and there were all these trucks, and all these trucks. And I suddenly realized that all those trucks were there as part of the film, and I had to stop the bike and get off and sit on a stoop for a couple of minutes, because I was shaking with fear. Because I had only ever worked with a maximum of 3 people. And suddenly there was an enormous thing. Our first shot was with over 100 extras. And to be honest, I was not prepared. I don't think anything can prepare you for it. But, you know, I knew I had to do something, so I just got on with it. And that's also, I think, part of that documentary background. You can be thrown into anything and pretty quickly figure it out and move forward, because you know that's what you have to do, and to respond to the events around you. And after that first probably 10 minutes, it was like, okay, I kind of get a sense of what I need to do now. And I've been learning ever since, you know, how to work with a crew.
Yeah.
And to try and stop moving lighting stands. But,
and actually, just learning the terminology, because if you come from a documentary background, you don't have all the terms, and you know, and like your gaffer might just start talking in another language to you. You're like, oh yeah, do that, yeah, put that, yeah, okay, whatever, you know, and then you realize, oh, they're putting up some huge light, which I didn't want to do. Do I tell them not to?
Yeah. And what's a gaffer?
I knew the gaffer. I had worked out the gaffer. Yeah. There's a few things there, but there are other terms, and you know, it gets it's a jargon, isn't it? So, yeah.
But I guess you discover the support structure that is there in the crew, because you've got your crew there, and as you said, the gaffer. They're all there to help you.
For me, I think it was good to sort of, I think the parallel track thing was good. And I think I also made a really conscious effort to try to get on bigger sets before I had to be responsible for, you know, directing them. And I think, you know, so yeah, when people, you know, ask me for it, you know, I've just come from doing these one-to-one advice sessions. I think if you can get on a set, even just, you know, to visit or shadow for a couple of hours, like any observation you can do where you're not the one responsible for, you know, getting the whole, because that's really the reason why it gets more complicated is just there's just so many more people to, you know, communicate with. And so once you can sort of appreciate how that hierarchy works and that rhythm works, and also the politics involved with that, you know, that's what's different about it. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's what we've been talking about. It's, you know, storytelling and where you're putting the camera, where you're putting the light, which documentary teaches you. But as far as how to interact with all the different departments and how the politics go, you know, that's, you can learn that, and you do learn that by doing. But I think if you can also absorb some of that by watching, and that's definitely, it takes the pressure off anyway to be able to, you know, do that. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it usually takes me the whole film to find out which is the wardrobe and which is the makeup department, because you only really see they do their job out. But like the on set, just for moments, you know, and you get to know them, and you maybe had a meeting with them. But you go, I'm not being rude about this department, but in the end, you've got your gaffer, your grip, your camera team, and your focus pullers. Those are the people, and the whole camera team. But those are the people that you have to communicate with, and the director, of course. So if you keep it down to that, you'll be all right. You know.
I'm just so pleased to hear you say that, because I've been so guilty for so many years, not remembering everyone's name on the set.
Oh yeah,
it's
just that's a difficult one.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it's what is so brilliant about the transition into the feature world is suddenly the collaboration that you are having with so many different people, all moving towards a common goal, and you know, there's a great joy to be found in everyone working together as a unit. And there are not many careers that you could ever have where you would have that experience on an almost daily basis, with everyone absolutely focused, hopefully, in going in the same direction. And it's incredibly rewarding to be part of a group like that, because we all live such isolated lives these days. You know, to actually come together is, it's just an incredibly human and you know, rewarding thing to be doing.
But so was the documentaries. Those small groups of people, you were very intimate with, and
Well, still my best friends forever.
Yeah.
And working with directors who have done documentaries versus those who haven't, is there? Have you come up against a director that just doesn't understand what you're trying to do, or conversely, one that can only think in that way, and so?
I did work with a director who had come from documentaries, and it was very frustrating for the first week, because you know, everything would be set up and ready to go, and they just expected it to happen as if it were the real world.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't. And it took about a week, and suddenly they clicked, oh, I do have to direct these people. And then from that point on, things changed, and it was very, it became a viable project.
Did you push that along? Did you sort of facilitate that?
You know, the job of the cinematographer, we're talking about politics here, it can be a very tricky one. But of course, I kind of did my best to, as everyone was doing, to try and say, look, you've got to take control at this point. And the actors were getting incredibly frustrated because they didn't know what to do. But, nothing prepares you, I don't think, for being a director. And it was the first film. And, the difference between the beginning and the end was phenomenal. And that, again, is part of that collaboration. All the heads of department, everyone was helping out to try and get that film made. And it did.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that more and more, as schedules get squeezed, and we're all having to sort of think on the fly and sort of act quick, work quickly and improvise, and all these have become essentials. Not so much things that we just ideally like to bring along with us. You have to work like this more and more. I see time is running on. I'd just like to give an opportunity for questions from the audience. Oh, good. Look at that. Okay. Yes, sir. I think we're going to ask you to stand up, and you might have a microphone. Is that right? Yes, it's coming in.
Thank you very much. I just want to say my favourite on the panel is Barry Ackroyd. No.
There's no favourites.
I wanted to know if you've ever, betrayed yourself with where you pointed your camera, and how it's made its way into the film, where it's like you've become the character. Obviously, in the clip you showed, he called you a monkey, but are there any times where it's like where you pointed your camera and it's become an element of the story that wasn't maybe intended, and it's like you as a person that's now become a character in the story in any kind of way? And that's not just for Barry as well, by the way.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I might not even be aware of it, but is that a bad thing or is it a good thing? Like in this case, the one we just showed, and it could also, you could say this is about Big Short or something. You put yourself into the story because you're trying to take the audience with you. And I mean, I get one of the things people say about this kind of my style of filming is that you feel like you're participating. And I learned this from Ken Loach, which means I learned it from Chris Menges, who actually taught Ken Loach how to make films, really. And it's, you put yourself in a position, you're an observer, but you're not, you can't, you have that frustrating thing, you're just the observer. You can't join in. And that's the performance, whether it's a real life performance or an acting performance. And I think that's when that's when the camera's working really well. So I think if you do it wrong and you get in the way of something, but physically I wouldn't, because we'd always stand back, and I would use long lenses, shoot over the shoulder, multiple cameras, but everybody stood back and trying not to interfere, And once it comes to drama, you definitely don't want to be in between the actors and what they're doing. That's not my view. Some people do it, but it's not my view at all. So I think that is the fundamental documentary approach: is you stay out of the circle, you move to make the scene right, and the lens. For me, it's kinetic, and the light, and the action, and being responsive to what actually happens, not what if you know there's another line of dialogue coming, you don't drift across and get it. You get there, like I did. You just get there when you're listening to it, and you're a little bit behind the story, and you have to make that happen, even when you know the story. So that's my key. Doesn't answer your question at all, but sorry.
You become really good at body language, right? You
Yeah.
become incredibly good at reading
Yeah.
the way a conversation becomes circular and now they're repeating what they've kind of said before and I've captured all that, so now I can go out and do the wide shot or I can do the high shot or whatever. So you become sort of this expert in psychology. It's kind of a weird, especially when it's in a different language, which I always thought was fascinating, you know. But I don't believe there's a fly on the wall. I think by being there, you're sort of changing the chemistry of what's in the room. I mean, I've been on documentaries before where, you know, that it's become clear that the woman that we were filming was in danger, and so it was in a different language, but at some point we put down the cameras and we took her to a shelter. So there's a moralistic and ethical story that you're telling as well, where you're always reading the situation and looking after the people that you're filming as well.
No, I had an experience where we were filming. It was a war zone. There was a ceasefire going on, and we were on the front line, and we were with a group of soldiers, and we were just talking. And one of them casually picked up an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade, to fire it into the other side. And he was just doing that because the camera was there. And I had to put the camera down and just walk away. Because you have to be constantly aware. Like you're saying, you have an incredible moral responsibility with what you're doing, the power that camera can give you, and the crazy things that it makes people do. You have to be constantly aware of that and not take advantage of something like that.
Yes, sir. You. Yes. Thank you.
So my question is, like, how do you guys decide the look of the film for documentary filmmaking as opposed to fiction filmmaking?
It's determined by the story, I think. I would say, you know, you don't choose the locations, you don't choose the actors, you don't choose the performance. So it's really all about capturing. And if if you're fortunate and you've traveled to some beautiful place and it's exotic and it's interesting, or it's a disgustingly horrible place but it tells the story, or you're with people you really despise, like in that film, but that they draw the picture for you and you capture it. It becomes that's useful when you move into drama, because you can carry that picture you have in your head of just how disgusting that was, how horrible these people were, or how beautiful this place was, and you want to try and bring that to the picture. And that, in my sense, my feeling, is you can bring more reality to a drama because you've got that in the back of your mind. I can't think of I can think of thousands of examples, but I can't, until you see it, you can't really express it. So. But I get your question. It's a very good question. I think it's just, I can't tell you how. And even today, if I'm doing a drama, I'm making it as believable as possible, not as beautiful as possible. You know, some of my work, as people say, it's ugly beautiful, and also beautiful, but that's good. That's a good thing to me. That it's ugly beautiful, you know.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if you could go back to any point during your career and give yourself some advice. When would it be, and what would you say?
Don't do it. On a regular basis.
Of course, it doesn't mean that. Of course.
Well,
he wouldn't be here.
Well, I didn't mean don't do cinematography, but other things. But that's you know, advice. In retrospect, actually, when I look back at everything I've done, I have no regrets at all. I would not be the person who I am now if I hadn't done all those things. I think the only advice that I constantly would give and had given myself is keep moving forward. You know, keep pushing yourself. Find something. And the beauty of documentaries was that, you know, every little bit of toy or technology that came in that was relevant, it's like, okay, I'm going to take that on the next documentary. Because you were shooting so much. And it's like, oh, that really works. Like when the Pro Mist lenses came out, a black Pro Mist, oh my God, you know, that was like, and then polarizers and things like that. And every single job I was doing, I was trying something else and trying something else and trying something else. Not really aware that I was building up that sort of quiver of knowledge and experience that I would need in the drama world. But it did help. So the advice is just keep doing it. No, don't do it.
Any more insights into that? We've got one, I think this gentleman here had his, yes, yeah, you, sir.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to ask, when you're doing stuff like the Marvels or Doctor Who, like when you need all these green screens and meticulous working, do you still get the influence of documentary, or is it a whole different thing?
Good question.
Obviously,
do you want the truth?
It's a different thing because of it. I don't know, you answer it.
Yeah,
it's not as fun. It's not as real. But
no, I think that, probably all of us would say that the stories we're drawn to are kind of real stories. You know, that our experiences can become part of. I've done one Marvel film. I appreciate it. You know, everyone wants to do a big film. You don't need to do a big film. I mean, blue screen. There's no interaction with the real world. Everything that you have done for the whole of your life as a cinematographer up to that point is defined down to where does the key light come from. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. I have a question for all of you regarding scripted feature. If you go with a kind of rigid shot list on set, and if you have to go off path to adapt to performance or any other reason, do you have any tools? Do you create rules to adapt, to synchronize this with the director and the rest of the crew?
I could answer that because I really don't like storyboards, and shot lists are quite sometimes useful because it's a kind of concept. But one, I can never remember dialogue, so it's no point giving me, you know, the actors go like, oh, they're going to say this, and then you're going to say that. I will move the camera when I feel like it, and I'll get it wrong sometimes. I get shouted at. Why are you doing that? But other times you say, how did you manage to know that that's what you should do as well? You know, why did you do that? You're saying you've done the body language. It's usually the flick of an eye or a blink of an eye that makes you want to do something, you know, and make an adjustment. But I like to think that a shot is three things. It's like a Cartier-Bresson photograph. It always got 3 or 4 things happening in that one frame, a single frame. You know, the cat in the window and the priest jumping over water, you know, something like that. But if you can make that into a cinematic, three-dimensional, not 3D. Whenever I say 3D, don't think I'm talking about that aberration of technique that came about. You know, you're feeling that you're in a real world. And that feeling, if you can just make that happen, then you're achieving it. That's basically it to me. Yeah.
Can we just get one more question here? Yeah, thank you. And then we'll...
Thank you. I'm a director, mostly of documentaries, centered on women's narrative and working exclusively with female DOPs. So my question is for you, Nicola and Catherine. As a female DP, do you face obstacles in your transition into theatre, or on the contrary, do you feel it gave you more credibility? And also, do you feel you had a responsibility at some point to share another vision on stories that are often told through a very male-dominated perspective?
I mean, I think the amazing thing about being a cinematographer is it's subjective. You know, it comes through me, and so I believe there should be a wide gamut of people behind and in front of the camera so that all those different stories can be told and can be reflected. There's always challenges. I've had, hundreds of challenges, and I've had people tell me you can't carry a camera because you're a woman. And I'd been carrying a camera for 10 years in 45-degree heat in Kiribati. And so there's always challenges, but I love proving people wrong. So
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that because I mean I think everybody who does what we do knows it's a really hard job that with like Nicola said, so many challenges, but and I also agree that it's all sort of you bring all of your experiences, including your experiences as a woman to the table whenever you shoot anything, whether it's documentary or fiction. I mean, I think, sometimes I do try to be sensitive to, what it is we're filming, so that if there is, and I know there was another panel here just yesterday about this very thing, so they probably spoke about it more eloquently than I will, but, sometimes if it's a sensitive scene that we are filming, I'll check in and see, if it matters, who the operator, whether it would make people feel more comfortable if the operators were women, for example. So, I try to be sort of sensitive and aware of the environment that we're creating on set and that kind of thing. I don't know if that's what you asked about, but anyway, hopefully that helps.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. Can we have a big round of applause for Nicola, Sean, Barry, and Catherine?